Now I'd like to offer a warm welcome from everyone in the room to Linda Atherton. Literally a warm welcome, as Linda's come from -10 in Chicago to 35 degrees in Perth. Originally from St. Louis, Missouri, in the Midwest of the USA, Linda Atherton travels the world helping people along food value chains connect with each other and build trust. This is Linda's first visit to Australia. We'll have a question and answer session after Linda's presentation. So please come up, Linda, and share your story.
Good morning. That's better. That's better. This is a great day for the grain industry, a great day in Australia. To have all of this leadership in this room listening to the stories of improvement, of forward motion, of the future. And I'm so glad to be here today, and thank you for the invitation to be part of these conversations. The future is bright. There's so much to look forward to. But there's work to do. This thing called social license is going to be very much a cornerstone of your success going forward. I'm here today to share with you some of the insights that I have personally witnessed in working with agricultural organizations around the world who are facing very similar issues. My company, Ketchum, probably a company you've never heard of, actually is 100 years old this month. This organization was originally predicated and founded on helping agricultural entities, much like your own, to be more successful. Today I lead what is now the global food and beverage practice of Ketchum, where we work as a communications consultancy to help groups like yours, companies, brands, to use communications tools to solve real-world business challenges. We have 70 offices around the world and 2,700 employees, but today this is the most important group that we have, this group in this room, because you're the future. So let's talk a little bit about social license. As I said, we've had a little bit of experience with that in the States, working with groups there. And I can tell you, I think you know it, you feel it, we're in the decade of turmoil. Probably an understatement. You're feeling it. Every time you turn around, there's an attack. This morning, in the news, tonight, on the BBC, it's everywhere. Suddenly, everything that we have done for decades, for centuries, is under question, under fire, under scrutiny. It used to be so much easier. And suddenly, we are being painted as the bad guys. What's going on here? Well, very similar situations are playing out all around the world. Let me share something with you. This is a clip from the States, and I think it'll look rather familiar.
Except the people who grow and raise food.
Our food system has been taken over by and large by a series of large multinational corporations.
So disconnected from this industrial food production system, we have some of these giant factories all over.
And I learned that giant chemical companies are feeding us. And these chemical companies aren't asking questions about what is good, right, and healthy for our children. They're asking questions about the bottom line. They're about making a profit.
But in the move we are calling Low, Whole Foods Market announced that by the year 2018, they'll not only label all of their organic products, but they'll clearly label all products that contain genetically modified organisms, or GMOs.
From Main Street to Wall Street, this information about how food is grown and raised is raising concerns about the long-term health effects of food.
Does that sound familiar? It's like the same old story is being played out everywhere in the world. These clips were taken a few years ago in the States. We were under tremendous pressure. The American agricultural community was up to its neck in criticism, in negativity, and simply couldn't find its way out. And the leadership of the agricultural community came together in a meeting much like this and said, what are we going to do? And their choices, they said, were we're either going to fight this thing head on, put up our gloves and go and get aggressive, or we're going to turn our cheek and just let it all play out because we can't really change it anyway. The truth is, neither one of those approaches works, and in fact, both will backfire. So I want to share with you why we've come to that conclusion and help you see that there are new ways, there are new paths forward, there are new approaches. It takes some context to understand what you're facing, and we need to know why. Why did this happen? The reason why is there was a fundamental social shift that occurred about 10, 12 years ago. A gigantic shift in the way in which people communicated, shared, and learned, called social media. You can blame everything in the world either on millennials or social media. I'm pretty sure of it, right? My children don't allow me to blame it on them, but social media is not really to blame here, but it is definitely a moment in time that has forever changed our businesses, our industries, how we go to market, how we're viewed, how we work. And yet, as an industry, as an organization, as a company all around the world, most organizations and industries failed to acknowledge the shift. And because they failed to acknowledge those changes and kept on working the way they've been working, what was happening is a huge clash. So what happened? Well, shift happened. And the double entendre is intentional. Shift happened because there's a societal clash going on that was not driven by anything that you did or didn't do or others did and didn't do. We lost faith as a society in anything that was big. Big is bad. Big banking, big chemical, big energy, big food, big agriculture. Suddenly everything big became bad. And now we are on the defensive trying to explain why we're just little independent farmers here. We did things this way forever. They don't understand us. They've never heard from us. They don't know us. And they don't know what we do. They don't like what we make and how we make it, but who the heck are they? This was one of the fundamental reasons we at our organization did some work, to do some research, to find out who exactly is driving this conversation, is driving some of this skepticism and energy around all this negativity, so that we were sure we knew who we were talking to and who we were dealing with. And what we found was a very unique individual, an individual that prior to this decade of turmoil had never existed. We call this person the Food Evangelist. I launched into this research in 2008 to try and understand what was going in at the society shifts that we were looking at. And when we saw this personality type, it was different from any other personality we'd ever seen before. And this was definitely the type of individual who was driving these conversations, changing the course of history, and changing our business landscape forever. Now you look at this picture and you say, oh yeah, I know who they are. That crazy group of loud activists who could never be satisfied, right? No, that's not them at all. These are everyday people, honest, good-hearted people who had simply lost faith in everyone telling them what was true and it turned out to be not true. They lost faith in big. They didn't have information. They had a lot of questions about food, where it came from, how it was produced, but no one was answering their questions in real, honest ways. And there was no easy way to get this information. So the assumption is when there's no information and no one's talking with a singular voice, you're trying to hide something. And that made things worse. So now these food evangelists are actually aggregating online. They're not all the same, they're not activists. They do have a propensity to not like things that are highly processed. And the one thing that's very unique about this type of individual, they are online and offline weekly, identifying and asking questions and challenging the food industry in ways that are almost 4 times a week. Now, I don't know about you, I don't have that kind of time on my hands. So your assumption might be, well, these are food snobs, these are people who are very wealthy, they can actually have time to do this kind of thing. Actually, this is my daughter-in-law. It's her, she's constantly, I think she spends her whole life doing this, right? She's walking through the store, OMG, did you see what's going on with the tomatoes? You know, really? This is a whole societal change in terms of who we're listening to and how we're getting information. And she's doing it, just like this person, online. She is tweeting, she's not blogging, she's not a blogger. These are people who are urgent, instant communicators. Now what's really interesting is we took this research out in 2011 around 11 different countries in the world to see if the Food Evangelist existed anywhere else, and lo and behold, we saw a portion of the population in every single region of the world had Food Evangelists actively at work, in differing amounts of population, but definitely actively at work. And if you aggregated them, they were represented about 22% of the populations that were surveyed. From a marketer standpoint, that's not very big. From a communication standpoint, that's a fairly large and vocal group. So our assumption was in 2011, these people are food snobs, they're elitists, they're highly educated. We can see through their profile that they're very well educated, they have higher incomes. So they must be snobs, and we just need to educate them better. Well, in 2013, we repeated the survey, and what we found was a 10% increase in just 3 years of people who actually profiled as evangelists. And at this point, they came from all walks of life, all economic factions, and, by the way, they were not necessarily one educational background either. So what is this telling us? It definitely changed my opinion that we were not looking at an elite group of influencers. What we were looking at was the tip of the iceberg, a societal change in the way people look, talk, think, and act with regards to the food they eat and buy. They have forever changed our landscape. They've already taken great measures in several countries to change what food marketers are putting out at the retail level. Much of the processed food is being pulled back, being renovated, being innovative. We're looking at clean label. These consumers have really made an impact, and they're not going away. The challenge here is that B2B industries, that's business to business, producers, ingredient makers, processors, are caught in the middle of this tug of war between what consumers are demanding and what retailers are putting on shelf. And they're asking those retailers and those manufacturers to tell them everything they ever wanted to know about how that food made it into the product. And you know what they're doing? Instead of answering the question, they're turning to you and say, you, farmer, you explain what you're doing. So now suddenly you're in the limelight, needing to defend your practices. And it's a whole new world. When I think about the future, I must refer to the fact that children are definitely paying attention to what their parents are teaching them and telling them. And these children are the next generation of food evangelists, but they're even more different than the ones we studied. I will tell you, it's a little scary as a parent and a grandparent. When I see this research, it makes my skin crawl a little bit. But children are telling parents what to buy. They are declaring what they will eat and what they will not eat. They are informing their parents that they will accept these types of foods, but they will not accept these types of foods. They are scrutinizing labels, and they're informing their parents what they're learning at school about those labels and about those practices of those farmers. And so where are we? Where are we in that conversation? Who is teaching those children? What are their sources of information? The interesting piece about this, and some of you are as old as I am, I'm just guessing, that in the past in marketing and in communications we would have said, oh, younger generations, they're always kind of firebrands. They'll definitely be more active and vocal, but they're going to mellow out when they have children and families. This group isn't going to. And here's why. What's different? These are children of the digital age, the social age, who are forever empowered to tell the world what they want, what they expect, and how they want it to work. We don't get to undo that. We can't go backwards. And I'm sorry to say, I wish I could make a lot of this go away. But I'm here to tell you there is a new way forward. These children will be tomorrow's core consumers. And our greatest opportunity today is to begin embracing the noise as an early warning sign of how we are going to have communications and have relationships built with our publics, with our communities, knowing that this is the consumer of the future. This is the new norm. This is the way it's going to be. And it's all new, it's all scary, but it's not impossible. So I'm here to tell you there is ways to move forward. We have to watch for the warning signs on the road. So here's probably the most powerful shift in the way we think. Businesses, yes, were created to make a profit. We all know this, right? But I need you to now look at this road sign and believe it. Businesses today now serve at the pleasure of the people. And if you make a profit doing it, bully on you. But it's not the other way around. This is the big change. This is the sea change. We need to move away from transactions to relationships, to begin embracing how people are thinking and feeling. This is an emotive kind of issue. It isn't based on fact or science. None of it is. It's emotions. And a lot of you will go, shh, I have no time for emotions. I have facts and science on my side. Well, good luck with that. Here's the thing. Consumers actually really do want to hear from you. In our own research, we asked, who are you paying attention to and who do you want to hear from? And look, farmers are right up there with the most important people that they want to hear from. But they will immediately tell us, we don't hear from them. The only time I know or even talk to a farmer might be at my farmer's market. And that's one guy, right? They're not listening and talking to chefs or academia or experts. They're not even talking to medical experts or agricultural organizations. It's one-on-one warfare, people. One-on-one. You are all stakeholders in this industry. In the past, we could use communications tools like, a campaign, marketing, advertising. We could buy our way into somebody's television set, right? It doesn't work that way anymore because the playbook changed. And today, the playbook that we're working from requires engagement, dialogue, conversation, relationship building, things that none of us have done in the past, and I certainly, as a trained journalist as a kid, never thought would be on my playbook. This is where we have to go. This is how we begin to establish connections with people who don't understand us, but need to. I think we may be at a tipping point, however. After doing a lot of our research, we went into the world looking at technology a little more closely, and we know. I mean, look at Green on Green yesterday. Was that fascinating? Amazing. Technology is changing our world, it's changing our food, but it's also going to change the way the food evangelist thinks and believes. Now, the challenging piece is, will the evangelist accept technology? The answer is yes and no. We do have a love-hate relationship with technology. We know that. I mean, even our own research showed that while people absolutely love the fact that they have all these ways to make their lives easier and better, the truth is they kind of wish it would all go away. It's noisy, it's complicated, and it's always changing. Just when I kind of accomplish my one app, 10 more pop up. You hardly know how to stay abreast of all of it. The food evangelists are definitely tech-rupters. We use that term because they, like those who embrace technology, are disruptive types. They're willing to look at change. They're willing to embrace change, but they want to be brought along. They want to learn. They're very, very eager to learn. We know that technology will be the future of food. There's no question about it. And we know also that consumers kind of fear anything that smacks of technology when it comes close to food, whether it's at the farm level or it's on their plate. Technology has kind of a yuck factor, okay? It shouldn't be there. Now look, we've all seen and know and very intimately know the pain that we have possibly self-inflicted in this era of GM technology. A fascinating piece of technology that was designed to help us grow bigger yields and produce better food yields, even in countries and places where the crop soil was not good. But the truth is, the antis painted pictures that were very visible, very memorable, that have stuck in people's minds. And it really gave us, out of the box, a very poor start to introducing food and technology to the consumer. Because now, every technology that comes on board is being compared to GM technology. So regardless of where you stand, left, right, center, it doesn't matter. Technologies are now being compared with, well, is this GM? Is it like GM? How is it different? Because we got so immersed in that dialogue. Will it be CRISPR? Will they understand that there's something different here? Will they understand at all that CRISPR really is a very different technology? How will we take them through that learning? And how will we embrace those technologies and not forget to bring them along? One of the most important things that I can communicate to you is the idea of transparency, and I'm sure that's a word everybody's heard, right? Probably sick of hearing the word transparency. What does it really mean? Well, it means every single one of you is going to need to play a role in helping the world understand what you do. Blockchain's a wonderful thing. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't. But blockchain is going to bring a heck of a lot of new information to consumers that will be out of context, that will have no bearing in background knowledge and understanding like you have. Who is going to teach the consumer what all this blockchain information and data that's been stirred up, what does it mean? You, every single one of you in this room, and every one of you on your farms, is a stakeholder in the food industry, the wider food industry. And you are a brand. You may not think of it as a brand. Each one of you extraordinarily independent, extraordinarily different. Don't even agree on many things. But you are one brand called food to your public. And the public expects you to communicate with it and to be aligned. And when they see an industry fighting with each other, tearing each other apart, it doesn't give them a whole lot of confidence, to be very honest. And it's no criticism, because this is going on in every part of the world. We have to begin realizing that they are not seeing themselves as target consumers. They see themselves as stakeholders in your business. And they expect to sit at the table with you and make important decisions. Right or wrong, good or bad, they are people who want to know more, learn more. They don't, absolutely, don't want us to hold the technology back from them and shield them because it's too complicated, which is the mistake we made with GM. So don't be afraid to talk about the technologies that you have and be proud of them. Don't hide it, bring it forward, but bring it forward in positive and interesting ways before those products end up on shelf. Take some responsibility for bringing the public along and consider it an important project that you do on an ongoing basis. It's not a one and done project. You are the teachers of your industry. You will help them see the future. But it's your job as much as it is anyone else's. And yes, I know. You're sitting there thinking, lady, I got a farm to run. I got a business to run. I don't need that. I know you don't. I'm sorry. But I can't make this go away. This is going to become the new job description, and it will require some new skills. It means that we need to look at transparency and the importance of our role as communicators as well as manufacturers of the grand food system that we have. And transparency does not mean showing up with piles and piles of more information. It does not mean more science, even though science is incredibly important. It does not mean more data and more information and more experts. What transparency means, according to our research, is behaviors. Behaviors that show me you're paying attention and you're sharing. Access to information, cues, clues, signals, signs, invitations. That's transparency. It's how you behave that will begin to help you earn social license. Social license is a set of behaviors. It's not a thing. It's a way of thinking. There are some very common roadmap do's and don'ts to earning social license. We've got to create a human touch between ourselves and our publics who are diverse. We need to make information easy to understand so that all can share it and use it. And I use the word share importantly. If you pile a social community with more and more pieces of information, they can't share that. You give them one picture with a great caption, guess what they're going to do? They're going to share it with the world. You've got to use the technologies that they're using to share your information. Don't hide behind agricultural speak, tech speak. Do not promise any absolutes. In fact, what we learned in our research is if you very candidly admit, here's what this will do and here's what it doesn't do. I wish it could. We're still doing research, and in 10 to 20 years, we hope to have answers to some of those questions. Consumers love that message. They actually love to hear that you're constantly, continually working to improve who you are, what you do, and the science that you all are investing in is a perfect place to begin starting your storytelling. What a great way to begin sharing with them. You're always looking for new and better ways to make food better. This is a never-ending journey. It's a journey that now changes the way we do our work, and it can be led by you. What we believe is that you have the ability to set the table, decide who comes to the conversation, who comes to your party. You have the opportunity to set the agenda. You have an opportunity to direct the conversations instead of being a victim. It's your choice. It's time to create a new food narrative that changes your conversation from value to shared values. Incredibly important, because when the public at large knows that you share the values they share, then they know you're paying attention. They know you're worth listening to. They know they can respect you. You know the old adage, what you do speaks more loudly than what you say. Your actions tell every story that needs to be told. So ask yourself in truth, what have our actions of our community told the general public lately about who we are and how we operate? We work with a group in the States that some of you might be familiar with, the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers Alliance. I see a couple of heads nodding. Historic group that was formed almost 10 years ago. And honestly, I'd never thought I'd see it in my lifetime because I've been working with agricultural groups for so long. 70 organizations, for-profit, non-profit, not-for-profit, agricultural organizations across all sectors of agriculture came together and said, enough is enough. We're getting beat up. We need to reclaim social license. We need to rebuild trust. And we need to make sure that we have permission for our children who are going to take over our farms to operate freely. There were groundbreaking firsts that were undertaken in this campaign. Actually, we call it a movement, not a campaign. We spoke with one voice. Not scripted messages, Not at all. We spoke in one tone, with one approach. Every individual who was behind a microphone or in front of a camera had an opportunity to communicate why they have faith in the food industry and why others should have it as well. We engaged for the first time America in a very, very inclusive dialogue where we held public events of this size and brought together critics, friends, people in the middle, and we had honest brokered conversations, Chatham House rules, no debates, no below-the-belt stuff, but very honest conversations, and we let the public decide what they wanted to believe. Our job was not about winning a war, changing minds. Our job was to identify what we could agree upon, and then move on. It was okay to disagree. There was no winners or losers in this. And in this setting, we help farmers lead the conversation instead of be attacked by or referenced in conversations. We created a long-term movement and not a campaign so that it would become a way of life for the American agricultural industry to begin doing this on a routine basis. And it took a lot of bold, disruptive steps to be in places that agriculture had never been before, including pop culture, Hollywood, strange places, but that was where we realized that many of the voices were coming from and changing the dialogue. We definitely changed the conversation. I'm going to tell you that the research that we did, I took all of the main messages that all of the organizations in those 70 companies and groups were using, and we analyzed them and did focus groups to find out which ones actually were working. Not a one. In fact, they were all backfiring. When we say our methods are proven safe, that was a very common message. What they were hearing is, yeah, your methods are tampering with nature. When we said we keep food affordable, they're hearing, yeah, but at what expense to quality? When we said most farms are family run, they would hear, well, yeah, but you're beholden to very big processors and the bottom line. This is all about profit for you. When we said we care about land and the animals, well, who wouldn't love to hear that, right? What they were hearing is, yeah, but you'll take profitable shortcuts whenever you can so that you can keep on doing business your way and get more money in your bank. When we said we need to produce more to feed the world, what they were hearing, a very different message. You want to produce more to sell to the world at any cost. We need to secure a domestic food supply was a very common message. They heard, you want subsidies and lax regulations so you can get by with whatever it is you need to do. And when we say we have the safest food supply in the world thanks to the agricultural industry in America, you know what they were hearing? Pesticides, antibiotics, hormones, don't think so. I don't hear safe in that. We had a long way to go. I'm going to very quickly, and I know my time's run almost to an end. In fact, it is at an end. But I'm going to show you just 2 short clips to show you the difference. First, this is a man who is very uninteresting, very boring, and I plead with you not to pay attention to him. We told a focus group, this man's unimportant. What we want you to do is listen to what he's saying. You have a dial in front of you that you can turn up or you can turn down. The dial, when you turn it up, says, I like what I'm hearing. When you turn it down, it says, I don't like what I'm hearing. It's used in political campaigns quite a bit. 50 means I'm not hearing anything plus or negative, right? You will see a red and a blue for Democrat and Republican views. We thought we would see a dramatic difference. We saw differences, but not that dramatic. This is a recording of very common messages being used, and we had a very large audience of consumers. And what we were reacting to and hearing them react to was the emotional way they heard these messages, not rational. If you did this research any other way, you'd get a rational reconciliation of what that message was telling them. So we took an emotional temperature. Listen to what happened.
One of the great strengths of American agriculture is that, contrary to public belief, most of the food we eat is produced by individuals and families who happen to care that it's safe and good for you. 95% of the farmland in America is family-owned and run. And big doesn't mean factory farm. Most large farms are successful family-run businesses that have high environmental and safety standards. Farming is not a business for faceless corporations. It's our heritage. And many farms and ranches in America use the same land and the same knowledge that's been in our families for generations. So for us, working the land is more than just a job. It's where we've grown up and will grow old, as probably will some of our children.
Messages you might have heard, messages you might have used, actually messages that might even resonate with you. We're not making a dent on these consumers. Blah, 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 blah is what they heard. Very quickly, I'm going to show you what happened when we stopped listening to ourselves, our truth, and we listened to their truths, and we looked for common ground. We approached this messaging differently. So let's do take two.
No profession or industry is, especially one as big, widespread, and diverse as ours. And consumers rightfully want to make sure we are treating animals well, maintaining food quality and safety, and doing our jobs in ways that don't harm the environment. So today, we want you to know we hear your concerns, and we are committed to responding. We need to do a better job of explaining what we do and why we do it. We need to acknowledge the areas where we've at times fallen down. We need to continue to take concrete steps to make sure consumers approve of the way we operate. And we know that no matter how good we are today, we can always be better.
Interesting, right? Pretty much we were saying what they wanted to hear was we get it. We hear you, we get you. We're not perfect, but we're trying very hard to always be better. We were being very real, very vulnerable, but very real. And the appreciation level went sky high. I'm going to skip to the end and simply say that there's only really one job at hand, and that is to help the world understand what you do so that you can do what you do and continue to feed us so well. I thank you so much for this opportunity. I don't know if we have time, do we?
That's fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We've gone a little bit over time, but the fact that Linda's come so far, I think we've still got room for a couple of quick questions. So,
I know, I've scared you all. I'm only 5'2". I'm not that tough. Yep, I see a question back here.
Linda, Sue Knights, brilliant talk, and thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
I believe a lot of the disconnect is happening very young, as you say, and in the fact that many populations are beginning to get highly urbanised,
Yes.
and there's a big disconnect between the urban and rural populations
There
and
is.
their understanding. We've lost the link with generations, with uncles or grandparents on the farm, and we've lost that understanding. So education, starts at home, starts in the school, and what are we doing in the schools to educate the next generation?
Yeah.
A lot of our teaching staff are from urban bases as well. They don't actually have that understanding of agriculture. And we need to do that value add in the school system to gain, the ground that we need with the next generation. What are your thoughts in that area and how we can address
It's
that?
definitely yes and. What would have been a perfectly logical singular solution 10, 20 years ago, because that's where most of our children were being influenced, would have been the right strategy. Today, it's an omni-channel world where we are absorbing information from a very tiny age on this world from multiple sources. So we have to approach the conversation, the educational effort from multiple different channels and sources. That doesn't mean more money. It just needs to be more clever about being more virtual and more nimble in communicating in multiple places, including in the school systems. Is there time?
Thank you. I'd like you to briefly comment on what constantly frustrates me is this gluten
Yes.
rubbish.
Okay.
Do we take that as a comment?
Yes.
Adam Handley, Australia-China Business Council. Thank you very much for a fascinating discussion. Excuse me. This is a very odd box to be talking into, by the way. With China representing 20% of the world's population and obviously a key export market, you've spoken today about the Food Evangelist and children being the consumers of the future. And I might say in my household, the children dictate what we buy and eat. How do we know what the consumers of tomorrow in the sort of Asian markets and obviously export markets are key for us? How do we know what they want?
Well, first of all, we do research, and I will encourage you to utilize research funds to know your markets and your market challenges as much as you know your seeds and your soil. The research we have done in Asia has shown us that there's very similar sentiments. In fact, what's really fascinating to me is the concept of values is fairly universal, country to country to country. They prioritize some higher and lower than others, but values registers very high regardless of the country. Now, of course, you have in mainland China, you have a very different political environment where they are not in control as much as they would like to be. So their greatest fear is safety, more than even health, it's safety. So where in other countries, health and the welfare of our planet and my children rises higher. But they all are within relatively similar ranges. I will say yesterday I did hear a number of people say, well, yeah, that's consumers. Consumers are not my concern. I sell to countries that don't have any problem with this, and that's fine. And that may or may not be China. It could be Southeast Asia. But you saw the data yesterday. The growth that you're going to realize is going to come from Southeast Asia. And that is not the consumer that you're looking at today. That is the rising middle class of the entire world. Social license is a syndrome of maturing markets and middle class. This is not a situation you can overlook. I think I've run way over our time. One more?
Last question.
Okay.
Linda Colin de Grassa, member for the Agriculture Region, and thanks for your presentation. It was excellent, along the lines of certainly things that I've been thinking about for quite some time. You talked about the growth, if you like, in the number of evangelists, so 22% going up to 24 in 3 years. How do we then, as an industry, agriculture, food production in general, as an industry that's declining in numbers, how do we then recruit people from outside the industry to become our evangelists?
Yeah, I think first of all, we live in a virtual enabled world. So where it might have required us to do grassroots kind of recruiting and y'all come and sign a petition, today we can do this actually through virtual technologies, is to identify common ground, identify common issues that we can all rally around. And I will tell you, it starts with health and safety. Every single conversation of common ground starts there. Find others who share in your vision for health and safety and a better future, because that's what you believe in too. And begin building a dialogue together about how you can take information that we have today and pieces of missing information and fill in the blanks together. I think I should excuse myself. Thank you all so much.
Thanks again, Linda, from everyone in the room. That was absolutely brilliant.